Amazing twist, Waitress's hidden talents exposed Billionaire's life transformed in 30 seconds. Emily slipped through the crowds with practiced ease, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, revealing a few stubborn strands that had escaped their hold. The clink of dishes and laughter of regulars filled the air of Blue Ridge Diner, but today felt different. She balanced 3 plates on her left arm, adjusting the fabric of her apron that was flecked with remnants of yesterday's soup. Yet, beneath the weariness etched on her face, a fire flickered within her, one ignited by her mother's dreams and her brother's laughter. This was her world of hustle and grit, yet with every passing day, the weight of her family's worries bore heavily upon her. She spotted her mother's worn-out shoes under the counter, a familiar sight that grounded her. Emily had long learned to navigate these stressful waters, calculating tips and orders as if they were part of a complex puzzle. Today wasn't just about serving comfort food, it felt like life's equation was shifting around her, creating a palpable anticipation in the air. Across the diner, David, hunched and brooding, slipped through the doorway. He was the kind of man who brought his own weather with him, an aura of restlessness clung to him like a heavy coat. As he settled in with his entourage, Emily overheard their insistent debate over a trivial mathematical conundrum. Their privileged ignorance flared like a neon sign, one that commanded attention. "Are you kidding? Isn't it basic algebra?" one of David's companions declared, frustration slicing through his tone. Emily, never one to hold back when she felt a pull, found herself closer to the table than she intended. She clutched a tray tight against her chest, her heart racing, caught between the urge to retreat and the draw of the challenge. In that instant, she decided to step forward, despite the sharp glances from her coworkers, fueled by their judgment. "Actually, it's quite simple if you break it down." Emily chimed in, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. With a flick of her wrist, she designed the solution like a master painter on canvas, drawing all eyes to her. Laughter escaped from David, pure, genuine, and piercing the tension. Magic spread through the room like a hush of wind. She didn't just resolve their dilemma, she momentarily liberated him from the gilded cage he inhabited, like a whisper of hope against the sprawling chorus of cynicism surrounding them. Yet, the air thickened around her as murmurs arose behind her back. Jealousy braided with curiosity twisted her gut, as she recognized not just their derision, but her own discontent. Did they see her as just a waitress, or were they absorbing the irony of her brilliance? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the squirm of tightening expectations clawing at her mind, anguish bloomed within her. Did her potential amount to mere entertainment for others? As David's gaze flicked toward her, the profound struggle behind his eyes reflected her own. To rise in her concrete world felt like a betrayal of her roots, amplifying the silent fears smoldering below the surface. In an electric moment, she met his gaze, feeling both invigorated and lost. Could she really cross the chasm between their worlds? The question echoed in her mind, certainty battling against the fear of rejection, the unyielding pressures of jealousy and ambition rising like an insurmountable wave. The din of the diner faded into a muted buzz as tension hung thick between them, one of vulnerability and longing. And as she turned back to her tables, a storm of emotions surged within her. The clock ticked on, their fates delicately intertwined, caught on the precipice of decisions that would sculpt their futures, leaving both achingly unsure of the paths that lay ahead. Emily stepped back into the rhythm of the diner, each order clanging against her burgeoning desire for more than what her current life afforded her. The thrill of having drawn David's gaze still echoed in her mind, but the weight of the disapproving whispers clung like fog. As plates were cleared and new patrons arrived, the usual sounds of the diner became a backdrop to her internal turmoil. She caught sight of David again, his laughter rippling with a carefree rhythm as he recounted some story to his friends. Each chuckle felt like a reminder of the gap between their worlds, a chasm she was desperate to bridge. The random connection they'd shared flickered in her mind like a beacon in the distance, both alluring and terrifying. Could that moment of shared understanding be the first step toward something greater for her? Or was it simply an illusion, an escape she could never afford? As her shift continued, every interaction with customers felt heavy. She wondered if they saw her as merely the waitress who flitted around in a faded apron, or if they could glimpse the woman beneath a potential untapped and hidden beneath layers of uniform fabric and culinary smears. A single equation had sparked a longing in her for validation beyond this cramped diner, an insistent push for recognition of her capabilities. The sweet escape of dreaming about a different life hovered as she wiped down tables, a fantasy draped in ambition. She rehearsed scenarios in her mind where she addressed David directly, where the mathematical challenge transformed into a conversation about her ideas. Yet, each imagined scene evaporated in the air like wisps of steam from the coffee pot. At the end of her shift, she slipped into the back room where the old-fashioned break table sat. She needed to recharge, to recalibrate, and to ground herself before the next wave of patrons descended. She pulled out her notebook, pages worn and edged with coffee stains where she'd jot down thoughts that swirled in her mind. Numbers danced across the paper complex, beautiful equations she crafted like art. The moment was interrupted by the jarring sound of the doorbell chiming. She turned her head instinctively, her heart quickening at the sight of David stepping into the diner again, this time alone. His presence sliced through her protective bubble. "Hey," he greeted, a hint of surprise lighting his features as he approached her, uncharacteristically unguarded without his entourage. "Hi," Emily managed, unable to hide the shimmer of excitement threading through her haze of nerves. "Can we talk?" His question hung in the air, hopeful yet layered with uncertainty. There rested an unspoken understanding between them, the realization that they each yearned for something beyond their current lives. "Sure," she replied, already questioning whether she could rise to the challenge of a conversation that felt monumental. He leaned against the counter, and each second of silence felt heavy. Emily seized the moment, whispering the thoughts that had burdened her for too long felt necessary. "I know you think you're smarter because of your education, but you're wrong. One of the biggest pieces of advice my mother taught me was to never underestimate a person based on their job. Everyone has something valuable to offer." David raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "You've got a way of seeing things maybe I could learn from you." Suddenly, the significance of their dialogue morphed from mere chit-chat into something electric. They were on the brink of an intellectual exchange that could ripple through their lives. Emily's heart raced not only from apprehension but also from the thrill of possibility. But just as a spark of hope ignited, a clattering crash echoed from the kitchen, pulling their attention away. The moment shattered, reality intruded with screaming chaos. "Emily!" her manager called. "I need you back here now." In that sudden whirlwind of urgency, the clarity of what was transpiring slipped through her fingers. As she dashed into the kitchen, she stole one last glance at David, their connection momentarily frozen in time. She could feel both her fear and a flicker of resolve rise inside her. As dishes crashed and orders shouted around her, Emily grasped the significance of the moment she had nearly let pass, face the chaos, but also face the curiosity within her. She resolved to explore this shared connection, for the depths of her dreams awaited just beyond the curtain of the familiar. With a narrowed focus, she breathed deeply and returned to her station, yet the conversation with David awaited her. The moment was fragile, suspended in air like the whirling flour dust in the kitchen. What would she risk to secure a future beyond her apron? The answer hovered like an unasked question at the edge of her thoughts. And just like that, the unsteady path to personal discovery beckoned with the promise of transformation, leaving Emily feeling more alive than she had ever felt in her solitary struggles. Would she have the courage to chase this newfound ambition? Emily navigated the chaos of the kitchen, her mind a whirlwind of uncertainty and anticipation. The orders flew around her like unyielding darts, each demand a pressing urgency to fulfill. Yet, within the frenetic energy, she felt the simmering potential of her earlier conversation with David pulse like a heartbeat, reminding her of what she could aspire to be. As the night wore on, her co-workers peppered her with questions about the crash she had just witnessed, but Emily barely registered their chatter. Her focus fixated on the flicker of possibility ignited by their encounter. For the first time, she sensed a deeper connection not just to her surroundings, but to her own aspirations and awareness that she was not merely waiting tables but laying the foundation for a life that mattered. With each hurried step back to her station, her thoughts crystallized. The diner, once a suffocating cage, began to feel like a canvas. Maybe she could conjure those equations into something more meaningful, to share them with someone who might appreciate them instead of relegating them to scribbles on napkins. The flickering ambition inside her grew bolder, spurring her to consider how she could initiate a new connection with David that was less about serendipity and more about intent. Once her shift concluded, Emily stashed her apron in the break room and retreated to her familiar sanctuary, the small booth she claimed as her own. Carefully, she opened her notebook, its pages filled with formulas and conjectures that had long lived in solitude. Each ink stroke resonated with her growing belief that she had something of value to offer. She began drafting a message to David. Should she mention her passion for mathematics? The dilemma wrestled in her mind. What if he dismissed her? What if he found her ideas pedestrian? The vulnerability of reaching out felt like standing at a precipice, the ground beneath her balled into a tight fist of hesitation. Yet, as the first words formed on the page, that familiar longing for validation ignited her resolve. "I think there's a way we could help each other," she wrote. The phrase sprawled across the page, begging conviction. What if he could mentor her? She imagined their conversations evolving from idle chatter to something substantial, where intelligence and ambition wove her realities together. The relentless chatter of the diner drifted back into her consciousness. Laughter bubbled over from a nearby table, patrons enjoyed their meals, unaware of the seismic shifts occurring within her. With her heart pounding, she tucked the notebook under her arm and walked out of the diner instead of going home. She felt weightless, as though the echoes of potential circled around her like a crisp autumn breeze. As she stood outside, cool air contrasting the warmth of the diner, she glanced down the street, weighing whether to seek out David where he often studied. The decision materialized in her gut. She needed to seize this opportunity before it slipped away like grains of sand through her fingers. With a combination of trepidation and exhilaration propelling her forward, Emily took a deep breath and set out. The pavement beneath her feet felt solid, grounding her resolve. Manifesting her ambitions required action, mere thoughts wouldn't suffuse her spirit with courage. Remembering the nights filled with equations, she could feel the power of her own intellect sharpening into clarity. She would articulate her vision, face her uncertainties, and demonstrate the depth of knowledge she held, disguised beneath layers of doubt. Yet, as excitement coursed through her, another question lingered: would he recognize the possibilities she saw? The answer to that question rushed ahead like a cresting wave, resolute and insistent. With each step, Emily felt boundless potential stir within her. The night stretched before her, ripe with available choices. Would this pursuit redefine her trajectory, bringing her closer to the life she yearned for? And just as she rounded the corner, a figure emerged silhouetted against the streetlights: David, absorbed in a book. The moment felt charged, a portal opening that could lead toward her aspirations or plunge her deeper into uncertainty. Suddenly, everything hinged on the impending encounter, amplifying the significance of the steps she was about to take. Would the gravity of this moment shatter her old perceptions, launching her into uncharted territory? The new chapter in her story loomed ahead, horizons glowing with promise, but the outcome remained veiled in the shadows of the unknown. Emily approached David, her heart racing and her mind a storm of possibility and dread. Moments stretched into eternity as she struggled to compose her thoughts. The very equations that had once provided her solace now seemed like barriers between them. What if this encounter revealed her inadequacies instead of her aspirations? "Hey, David," she called out, her voice more tentative than she intended. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features before being replaced by a warm smile. "Emily. What's up?" Caught in his gaze, Emily felt a mingling of encouragement and fear. She was the waitress, and he was the golden boy of academia, but for once, the divide seemed negligible. She slid into the seat across from him, the comforting familiarity of the diner replaced by the sharpness of this moment. "I wanted to talk about the math project," she said, her own words sounding inadequate even to her. His eyebrows lifted curiously, shifting his book aside. "Really? I'd love to hear more." The invitation hung in the air, electrifying. Somehow, those casual words sparked clarity. She dipped into her notebook, introducing her ideas. As she spoke of the beauty she saw in her mathematical proofs, her confidence began to blossom, unfurling outward like petals kissed by sunlight. Yet, doubt lingered at the edges of her enthusiasm. Would he regard her theories as worthy of his attention? The possibility loomed heavily. "Those are some interesting concepts," he mused thoughtfully after she shared a few core ideas. "You have a real knack for articulating complex concepts. Have you ever considered pursuing this professionally?" Her pulse quickened at the thought, the weight of it both exhilarating and terrifying. "I want to, I don't know how to break into it. I've been stuck in this rut, waiting tables, feeling like I'm wasting potential." David leaned forward, his expression supportive yet probing. "You're not wasting anything, Emily. We all start somewhere, but if you're ready to take this leap, I can help." The warmth of his encouragement ignited a flicker of hope. With David's support, the once insurmountable obstacles appeared more like puzzles waiting to be solved. She could envision a roadmap stretching out before her, pathways illuminated by the knowledge she yearned to harness. "Really?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You would?" "Yes, I would," he replied, almost as if daring her to question his sincerity. "Let us meet a couple of times this week and I can guide you through the basics of publishing your work or preparing for interviews in the field." A rush of gratitude swelled within her, mingled with disbelief. This was a turning point, a potential pivot into a reality she had only quietly dreamed of. Unbeknownst to her, as she absorbed his words and their implications, three distinct emotions surged within her: ambition, anxiety, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. But then came the inevitable shadow. What if this was just a fleeting kindness, a refrain to placate her hopes without any real commitment? "And what if I fail?" she blurted, the vulnerability of the question dissolving her carefully constructed facade. David's gaze hardened into focus, his voice softer yet more assured. "Then you fail, and that's okay. The most important part is you try. Each step will refine your understanding and build your skills. But if you don't take that leap, you might never know how far you could go." His words hung in the air, echoing against her previous fears. So much rested on that decision. Taking a slow breath to steady herself, she nodded slowly. "Okay, let us do it. Let us meet." The affirmation sent a jolt of energy coursing through her, a tangible spark igniting something new. As they exchanged details for their first meeting, Emily felt the contours of her self-doubt begin to blur, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. Still, uncertainty remained, pressing against her like a weight she couldn't shake. Would she truly be able to rise to the occasion? The prospect both thrilled and terrified her, mirroring the veins that pulsed in her temples. And as she stood to leave, their plans hanging in the air, another thought seeped in, one that left a gnawing apprehension. Was she ready to face the frictions of ambition and doubt head-on, or would she falter when it came time to deliver? The clarity of her decision felt like a leap into the unknown, and the ground beneath seemed slippery and unpredictable. Yet, like a flame daring to dance amidst the wind, her desire for growth shimmered brightly. The next chapter of her life lay unwritten, filled with both promise and peril. The moment of her transformation hovered just out of reach, and as she took her first step towards this new path, the weight of her impending choices bore down with an incessant urgency. What if the brilliance she sought was eclipsed by the very fears she long sought to conquer? The sun cast long shadows across the diner as Emily sat at her usual spot the next day, the familiarity of her surroundings now tinged with a nervous anticipation. She had promised to meet David later, but the hours stretched out ahead of her, laden with weighty expectation. Doubt gnawed at her insides, a relentless companion, whispering assurances that she wasn't ready. What did she have to offer? The thought struck like icy water, numbing her conviction. While she feared they might be wasted moments, she couldn't shake the thrill at the prospect of unearthing latent potential. With each table she served, she juggled plates and perception, serving meals while wrestling with her self-image. Could she pivot from waitress to mathematician? The two identities felt so disparate, yet the enormity of her yearning pulled painfully at her heart. A hidden aspiration began to rumble within her, the consciousness of an identity she had long ignored. When her shift ended, the diner's neon glow faded into the twilight, and she prepared for her meeting with David. The small diner buzzed with the hum of patrons, but all she could hear were her racing thoughts. The clock seemed to slow painfully, a relentless reminder of her apprehension. "Remember," she muttered under her breath, "just be yourself." It was a mantra that seemed too simplistic, yet she clung to it desperately. As she approached the university library, a starkly academic environment, her confidence dwindled like the sunlight that faded above her. How was she to hold her ground among scholars, bearing only the weight of her waitress apron and a crumpled notebook? David was already at a study table, a pile of books around him. His concentration broke upon spotting her, and a smile bloomed across his face. It filled her with warmth but heightened her anxiety all the same. Here was the embodiment of every reason she felt outclassed. "Emily! You made it!" he exclaimed, pushing back his chair. "Thanks for inviting me," she responded, her voice huskier than she intended. The words felt stilted and unsophisticated compared to the elegant banter she imagined shared between distinguished colleagues. As they sat, he encouraged her to unfold her ideas regarding her mathematical concepts. It began with a simple discussion but quickly morphed into something more profound. Their exchange traversed theories, the elegance of formulas, and the real-world applications of mathematics. Each moment imbued with supportive nods from David, the barriers she'd erected around her insecurity started to shake loose. Then came the moment that jolted her. He pushed a blank sheet of paper toward her, a challenge glimmering in his eyes. "Show me how you would solve this equation. Put your unique spin on it." The veneer of confidence she had built crumbled. She blinked fiercely, heart fluttering in her chest. "Me? What if I make a mistake?" "Everyone makes mistakes, especially when they're learning. That's the point." His insistence struck her as a lifeline thrown in tumultuous seas, the invitation initiating a buoyancy she hadn't expected. She choked back the rising tide of fear. What if this moment illuminated her inadequacies rather than her talents? Yet there was an unshakable realization that this was a chance not just to prove herself to David but to herself. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed the pen. Ideas rushed through her mind, sparked by sunlit moments of inspiration. She quickly jotted down assumptions, calculations, conclusions, each step deliberate as her confidence began to reconstruct itself. When she pushed the paper back toward him, their eyes locked, hers filled with equal parts fear and exhilaration. Before she could analyze his reaction, he grinned widely. "This is great. You've got an instinct for this." Her pulse quickened in response to his praise, but it was fixed on the prospect of more than just validation. It ignited a deeper hunger for mastery. She felt ready to embrace the journey, yet a shadow loomed. The transition from thought to practice still grazed the edges of her terror. "David, it's one thing to prove I can solve a problem, but what about everything that comes after?" The glint in his eyes dimmed momentarily as he considered her, but then he spoke thoughtfully. "You have a solid foundation. What contracts evolve from this moment? What paths unfold from here? You'll have to face challenges head-on, but if you're willing to step forward, I can guide you. As they continued discussing the layers of the math program, another realization pressed down upon her: breaking through her barriers was only the beginning. Would she have the grit to maintain this momentum? The pressure of the moment caught her breath, and it dawned on her that this journey demanded not just intellectual effort, but emotional endurance as well. The question sat heavy on her chest: would she rise to the challenge, or would all her newfound confidence evaporate when reality pressed upon her once more? With the realization looming like a thunderstorm on the horizon, she found herself locked in a decision that lingered on the edge of volatility. The ultimate question remained unspoken, yet it resonated in the air: how far was she willing to push herself before the inevitable confrontation with her self-imposed limitations became unavoidable? As the hours drifted on and the shadows deepened outside the library, Emily felt a tremor in her resolve. The dialogue with David had catalyzed a shift within her, yet the fear that had dogged her every thought now morphed into something tangible, something to navigate. She couldn't help but question what it would mean to embrace this new identity: mathematician, scholar, and more than just a waitress. Would this be a fleeting moment of courage or the beginning of something more? She pondered as she left the library. The cool evening air wrapped around her like a reassuring embrace, yet it did little to suppress the burgeoning anxiety. The weight of expectation pressed down on her shoulders, tangling with the gossamer threads of aspiration that had started to weave themselves through her mind. She walked to her car, feeling the distance between each step. The images of calculations, the raw beauty of numbers, and the intricate dances of logic lingered in her mind, battling against her insecurities. Could she transform those moments of clarity into something potent? Something lasting? Just be yourself, she muttered again, attempting to summon the confidence that had flickered to life during her session with David. But self-doubt had a stubborn way of clawing back into her thoughts. Remember the waitress? It whispered. You don't belong in the realm of numbers and proof. The internal tug-of-war surged, the voices of her past refusing to yield ground to her dreams. Yet, the very act of stepping into the library had been a departure from who she thought she was. In those engaging discussions with David, she felt as though unseen doors had creaked open. She began to see beyond merely solving equations. There was a world of theory and application waiting to be explored. The night deepened around her, mirroring her thoughts, and she realized that this was a pivotal moment, a fork in the road. Emily remembered David's words: what contracts evolve from this moment, what paths unfold from here. She reached for her notebook, flipping to the fresh pages. The blank canvas beckoned her, daring her to fill it not just with calculations but with aspirations. She began scribbling down her thoughts: goals for the upcoming semester, concepts she'd like to explore, and workshops she could attend. With each word she penned, the grip of her doubts loosened slightly. It was an act of defiance against the narrative she deconstructed about herself. She tapped the pen against her chin, contemplating the idea of enrolling in additional mathematics classes and seeking mentors within the department. What would her colleagues think? What if she struggled? Following the rhythm of her doubts, she began formulating a plan to confront them. Edging past the fear, she decided to approach the mathematics faculty during their office hours. It was time to tap into their expertise. Maybe she wouldn't have the polished charm of an academic, but her unique perspective could offer fresh insights. As she jotted down her thoughts, a determination flooded her veins. Yes, she was a waitress, but that part of her life was a foundation, not a ceiling. The experiences she gathered there could enrich her journey into academics. She could reflect those lessons: the resilience, the people skills, the ability to balance chaos. A sudden realization struck her: each time she served a customer, she had to assess and quickly solve problems on the fly. Those skills were not incongruous with her newfound ambitions. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to sever ties with who she'd been. Rather, she could build upon it. The waitress didn't have to disappear, she could become a mathematician because of everything she already was. Energized by this epiphany, she glanced at her watch. It was late, but she felt a strong impulse rising within her: she needed to share this with David. The prospect of opening up about her fears, ambitions, and the fire she felt to learn more was almost exhilarating. As she prepared to reach for her phone, a thought cut through the noise of her excitement. What if he wasn't as supportive as she'd hoped? What if the clarity of her vision undercut her feelings of inadequacy? Would she allow the fear of judgment to silence her ambition? In that moment, she understood that the journey was just beginning. How much she was willing to share, and the extent to which she committed to her development, would define her path forward. Her fingers danced over the keys, hovering before initiating a message, the stakes higher than they had ever been. Would she seize this moment for herself, sharing her aspirations, or would she retreat behind walls of self-doubt? The tension lay gleaming in the air, waiting for her next move. The realization dawned that choice was now hers to navigate, threading her identity a little closer to what she envisioned. As she hesitated, the phone buzzed. A text notification lit up the screen, revealing a message waiting from David. Could it be a sign to take a leap, or merely another reason to hold back? The uncertainty loomed large, and the next chapter hung in the balance above her like a tightly coiled spring. Emily stared at her phone, the message from David glowing defiantly on the screen. Her pulse quickened, anticipation and anxiety mingling within her. The moment felt electric, the choice ahead of her heavy with significance. For an instant, she considered simply walking away, ignoring the message and all the complexities it represented. But she couldn't. Not now. This was the very path she yearned to explore, the bridge between the life she had always known and the future she dared to dream. With trembling fingers, she tapped the notification, opening the message. Hi Emily. I was thinking about our conversation earlier. Would you like to grab coffee sometime this week? I'd love to hear more about what you're interested in exploring. A warm rush surged through her. It was more than just an invitation, it was a doorway. She could share her thoughts, the burgeoning ambition that coursed through her. This was the time to step into that uncomfortable space she had been avoiding. She typed slowly, considering each word. I'd love that. How about Thursday? Sending the message felt like shedding an old skin. As soon as her phone buzzed again, a bright Thursday works. She knew hesitation was slipping away. Over the next few days, her mind buzzed with excitement and nervous anticipation. She began to flesh out her thoughts, the goals she wanted to express to David. The more she pondered, the clearer the vision became. Her morning classes felt richer, equations transformed into stories ready to be told. Each time she deciphered a new theorem, she believed a little more that she belonged in this world. Yet, doubt still lingered beneath the surface, lurking like shadows that threatened to suffocate her growing confidence. What if the faculty was dismissive of her inquiries? Or worse, what if she wasn't as good as she hoped? Each whisper of doubt prompted her to confront that familiar defiance. She had spent years navigating the chaos of the restaurant, a realm where quick thinking and resilience forged her character. She resolved to use that same energy in academia. The thought of her meeting fueled her further. She began sketching a list of potential mentors, ideas for projects, and topics for research that intrigued her. Math had never just been numbers for her, it was a language that unlocked worlds. With each missive of realization, her philosophy shifted from simply seeking validation to embracing a deeper understanding of herself. Thursday arrived, bright and clear. Sipping a latte in the corner of the cafe while waiting for David felt surreal. Every tick of the clock echoed her heartbeat. As David entered, his warm smile met her with unexpected familiarity and kindness. He slid into the seat across from her, and for a moment, Emily felt anchored in presence. So, what's brewing in that brilliant mind of yours? He asked, leaning forward, genuinely interested. A flood of ideas rushed to her lips: her ambitions in mathematics, the sense of belonging she had discovered, the workshops she was eager to attend. With each sentence, she felt an explosive shift. The words escaped her as if they had always wanted a voice. But somewhere deep inside, an unnerving thought nagged at her. would David see past the enthusiasm? Would he connect her aspirations back to the waitress she had been? The struggle ensued in her heart, a dance between self-acceptance and lingering doubt as she shared her story. As she drew a breath to continue, the door swung open, and a figure stepped inside. The sudden intrusion felt intrusive, almost jarring. Emily's focus narrowed, her thoughts spiraling as her gaze landed on a tall man, one she recognized. A familiar face from the restaurant, a high-profile customer she'd served on several occasions. That man could expose everything she was trying to transform. Did he even remember her? Did he have any clue about her ambitions? The thought surged like ice water. This was the key player who could rip apart her carefully constructed facade. Her words caught in her throat as she wrestled with the turbulence of identity crashing in on her. Who was she truly? The waitress still navigating self-doubt, or the emerging mathematician daring to redefine her narrative? With the tension palpable, she locked eyes with David, standing at the precipice of an important revelation. The time had come to face what truly defined her. Would she confront the shadows of her past, or would she let them define her future? In that moment of uncertainty, her decision loomed larger than ever, teetering wildly like a tightrope walker mid-step. Panic mixed with determination as Emily locked her gaze onto David's face, searching for an anchor in the storm of uncertainty swirling around her. The tall man made his way to the counter, and she couldn't shake the instinctive urge to shrink in her seat. Her heart raced frantically while her thoughts raced faster. Why did he have to show up now? David, catching her hesitation, raised an eyebrow, but his presence resonated as a gentle encouragement. Emily took a deep breath, inhaling the aroma of coffee and courage, letting it fuel her voice. "I'm interested in math beyond just the numbers," she said, trying to channel her fear into something articulate. "It's like finding connections hidden beneath the surface." As she spoke, she could feel the essence of who she was slip into her words. She painted a picture of her ideas, how theories interlinked like branches on a tree. She forced herself to look away from the man, redirecting her focus entirely onto David as if the world beyond that table had vanished. "Mathematics," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "is a universal language, one that can change lives and perspectives." She felt a thrill course through her, realizing she was no longer just recounting her story. She was living it. Her ambitions shone brighter than her insecurities. "Connections like ones you made while serving people, I bet," David remarked thoughtfully, an echo of observation mingling with excitement in his tone. Her heart leapt at the idea of her past experience actually contributing to her present growth. It dawned on her, in that moment, that every interaction at the restaurant had sharpened her perception. She had navigated complex dynamics, deciphered unspoken needs, and managed high-pressure situations with grace. Now, that same instinct was unfolding in academia. "Exactly," Emily replied, leaning forward. "Each equation tells a story, each problem unfolds a mystery. I want to explore those mysteries further. I think faculty might overlook how past experiences shape our understanding of complex subjects." David's gaze brimmed with interest, but an engaging glimmer in his eyes flicked toward the door. The tall man from the restaurant stood waiting for his order, a coffee cup in hand, oblivious to the ripples he had caused. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears, stirring the fear again. What if he remembered her? What if he shared her story with the world outside this cafe? The thought sent a fresh wave of dread through her. Would he undermine her progress? She began to question her ability to present herself as someone more than just a former waitress. Then an epiphany struck. Perhaps that was precisely what she needed to embrace. "I've realized," she spoke, feeling the words surge with newfound clarity, "that my past experiences don't diminish my worth, they enrich it." David nodded, his expression encouraging, anchoring the tumult of her emotions. For every moment spent dodging her past, nervously prioritizing acceptance, she had been neglecting the strength of her journey. "Have you considered proposing a project that combines your background with your studies?" he asked, a spark igniting in his tone. Emily paused, the suggestion embedding itself deep within her consciousness. Her vision expanded as she connected dots: her understanding of people, her growing love for mathematics, the narratives she could weave together. A project that told her story while exploring mathematical theories could be profound. I haven't, she admitted, her vision sharpening as curiosity ignited possibilities. That could be a unique angle. In that moment, she shifted the narrative. She no longer felt trapped by the specters of doubt. Instead, she stood at the threshold of a new initiative, an understanding of how her past and present could interlace, forming a unique rhythm of ambition. But as the tall man stepped closer to their table, her heart thudded again. With decisiveness uncharacteristic of her previous hesitations, she faced him, ready to redefine how he saw her. "I know who I am becoming," she whispered under her breath, igniting a rush of fierceness within her. Was it time to confront the shadows head-on? The looming tension of recognition felt heavier, a weight pushing against her resolve. Would she let fear scream louder than her courage? Her thoughts echoed ominously, but that singular moment of empowerment sparked a resolve in her heart. This was about to be the defining moment of her metamorphosis. As she prepared to stand and claim her truth, two paths unfolded before her, one toward the potential embrace of her past and the other into the uncharted territory of her future. Would she step boldly into the chaos of confronting her old life? Or would she hold fast to the empowered narrative she had begun to script? The decision sat heavily on her shoulders. Could she harness the courage to confront the man from her past, or would she retreat into the safety of anonymity? Whatever the choice was, it marked the next chapter of her transformation. Emily's heart thundered in her chest as she caught the tall man's attention. The moment crystallized into a vivid tableau, the cafe's bustling ambience faded into a mere background noise. Her senses sharpened, every detail of the scene highlighting her internal struggle. The aroma of fresh coffee wasn't just a pleasant scent, it was the symbol of her ambitions breaching the surface of her fears. "Didn't you used to work at the Olive Grove?" The man stepped closer, his voice slicing through her moment of clarity like a knife. Recognition flickered in his eyes, a blend of surprise and curiosity. Instantaneously, each encounter she had experienced in the restaurant replayed in her mind: every customer who had dismissed her, every patron who had treated her like a mere servant, gleefully clouding her ambition. Yet, instead of retreating, she felt something evolve within her, a surge of defiance. "I did," Emily replied, steadying her voice, marshalling her every word with intent. Before her stood the chance to redefine her narrative. "But I'm moving forward. I'm studying mathematics now, exploring new avenues." Each syllable gained weight, carrying her intent like a proclamation into the air. His expression shifted, an eyebrow arched, a flicker of intrigue. "Really? I'd have never guessed." Beneath the surface, she sensed the condescension lining his words, a subtle reminder of where she had come from. But rather than withering under the spotlight, Emily embraced it. Her mind whirred, recognizing that this moment was a fork in her journey. A thought collided within her: what if she leaned into this moment rather than shy away from it? "It's amazing how much insights from my past can illuminate complex theories," she pressed on. A sense of power flowed through her voice as she swept away trepidation. "That's interesting." He studied her, eager perhaps to probe how this evolution had occurred. For her, it was the first time her layers of self-defense began to peel back willingly, exposing her true resilience. "What kind of project are you working on?" "I'm formulating a proposal that reflects how personal experiences shape mathematical understanding," she stated boldly, watching as he processed her response. Each element in her story galvanized her presence. "I've realized that every equation can relate to a personal narrative, as every customer incident revealed a lesson. I'm exploring those correlations." He regarded her for a moment longer, and for the first time, she could see a flicker of respect flickering in his eyes. "You're serious about this?" "Absolutely," Emily said, her pulse steadying. With each passing second, a surge of confidence swelled within her, fueling her healthier self-image. In that fleeting moment of connection, Emily sensed a pivotal change. She no longer felt reduced to her past as that waitress but rather celebrated her growth. A woman evolving from her experiences, resisting the urge to be belittled, became her reality. Self-reclamation enveloped every thought. What else was she capable of that she had yet to discover? As she prepared to leave the conversation, she caught David's encouraging nod from across the cafe. She realized she was standing at a crossroads again, but this time, looking into an abyss of opportunity. Grasping the edge of her identity and newfound resolve, she turned her back toward the tall man. What a transformation! She had no desire to confront him further. Instead, she was stepping into her future. As she walked away, the thrill of potential things to come tingled at her fingertips. But that moment held another implication. David's earlier question lingered in her mind like a forgotten chapter waiting to be explored, momentarily silencing the machinations of self-doubt. A project tying her mathematical pursuits to her narratives awaited the catalyst that could amplify her journey. Yet uncertainty creamed into the triumph. Would this project open more doors or unveil more judgment about who she used to be? Determined, Emily took a step for herself. She resolved to develop a compelling proposal, one that would unite her past with her mathematical exploration. It was more than a project, it was an assertion of her worth. Would she have the courage and skill to present it before a panel that had previously overlooked her? As the cafe ambience returned to its normal rhythm, pulsing with life and layered conversations, Emily's own internal bravado resonated with every rising heartbeat. She was no longer just a waitress, she was a burgeoning mathematician ready to claim her narrative. And amidst this fresh self-awareness, the challenge beckoned. The first step would be the hardest, but she could feel the winds shifting. As her fingers clenched into a fist of determination, she wondered what stories, what confrontations awaited her as she prepared for the next step in her academic career. What would it take to seize this opportunity and shatter the expectations of a narrow-minded world? Emily thrived on the energy swirling around her in that cafe, invigorated by a blend of fear and determination. The world was alive with possibility, she could feel the tides of change coursing through her veins. Stepping away from the table where her tight-knit conversation with David had sparked an awakening, she walked out into the crisp air, embracing her renewed focus. The conversation with that tall man had shifted something fundamental in her. She didn't need to shrink back into the shadows of her past any longer. Those experiences had become the tapestry she could weave into her future. As she pondered her project proposal that combined her life as a waitress with her newfound ambitions, the edges of her identity began to sharpen, revealing both the complexity and strength of her journey. Wasting no time, she rushed home, quickly setting up her workspace. It was time to invest in herself. With determination flooding through her, she opened her laptop. Typed words flowed onto the screen like a river of inspiration. A crisp title, Narrative Threads in Mathematics, How Personal Experience Shapes Understanding. It held a promise, it was her declaration to herself and the world. She tapped fingertips across the keyboard, crafting connections between the customer interactions that once felt demeaning and the mathematical principles that soared beyond her imagination. Each line painted a picture of resilience, creativity, and authenticity, of her triumph over the constricting perception that defined her. As she wrote, the initial nervousness slipped away, replaced by conviction. She articulated how every frantic night at the diner had honed her problem-solving skills, how agitation could morph into insight, and how the myriad of human interactions, each with their own story, could illuminate complex ideas in mathematics. Days turned into a week, and the project blossomed into something rich and layered. With David's guidance, Emily refined her proposal, intertwining personal anecdotes with academic rigor. She sought feedback, those once paralyzing fears transforming into courageous queries. Mentorship conversations with David ignited a fire within her, not just to achieve but to thrive. Every session felt like unlocking another chapter of her identity. The day finally arrived where Emily would present her proposal to a panel of faculty and peers. Nervous excitement pulsed through her, morning sunlight illuminating her path as she walked into the auditorium. She could feel every heartbeat resonating like a drum. The culmination of her journey weighed against the prospect of being seen as more than just a waitress, but as a thinker, an intellectual. "Emily Bennett," the moderator announced, and as she stepped forward, a wave of clarity surged through her. With each word she spoke, she commanded the room, sharing how building equations involved the courage to navigate complexity much like her life had taught her. Faculty members leaned forward, intrigued by the fresh narrative thread she introduced. When she completed her presentation, a resounding silence fell, followed by applause. The faculty exchanged glances filled with respect, acknowledging both her passion and innovative approach. Emily took a deep breath, the weight of relief mixed with unparalleled joy washing over her. Did they see her now as an individual with merit, as someone ready to forge her own future? Later, as she exited the auditorium, David waited with a proud grin. "You did it!" he exclaimed, enveloping her with a warmth she had craved, yet never thought she would receive. "Thank you for believing in me," she replied, a tide of vulnerability cascading within her. Her earlier insecurities had slipped away like autumn leaves in a gentle breeze, replaced by the certainty of her newfound identity. Weeks passed, and with her hard work, Emily earned recognition within the mathematics department. Mentorships flourished, and she was no longer ashamed of her roots. She began fostering a community of peers who celebrated diverse backgrounds, each voice adding richness to their shared pursuit. Through her academic victories, Emily understood that her past was a springboard for personal achievement, not a hindrance. She successfully transitioned into a scholarship program for aspiring mathematicians, a place where her voice was valued. And on that final day, as she stood on stage to accept her scholarship award, she reflected on who she had become. Once known merely as a waitress, she now emerged as a confident scholar, ready to tackle the world of mathematics. The journey had not stripped her of her roots; instead, it had intertwined them with her ambitions, creating a multidimensional tapestry where every thread told a part of her story. "Believe in your potential," she declared to the gathered peers, her voice wrought with passion as the crowd erupted into applause. With that, Emily had conquered her fears, embraced her strengths, and transformed her life, achieving the dreams that once lay just out of reach. She no longer shied away from the past that once defined her; it was now merely the foundation on which she stood, poised to reach the stars. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share.